Hello, and welcome to today's Opt to Thrive Manage Your Mind Mindful Moment.
Welcome to Opt to Thrive, your go-to podcast for women's wellness in midlife, designed to educate, support, and inspire you to live your very best life. And now your host, Dr. Karina Sims.
So today I want to talk to you about something called confirmation bias. It's a really important concept to be aware of, and just by being aware of it, it can help us make some changes in our lives that we'd like to make. And also, it can help us avoid some unnecessary heartaches and a lot of suffering. So confirmation bias starts with our beliefs, or what we think to be true. Once a belief pattern has been created in our brains, it makes what's called a neural pathway. Our brains can be a lot lazy, and once this pathway is set, it really wants to keep practicing this one, and it will really resist having to make a new one. Now, an easy example of a common neural pathway would be something like driving to and from work. The first time you did it, you needed to really pay attention to where you were going, what roads you were going to take, how you were going to get there. But then a year later, you could drive to and from work without much thought at all. In fact, you could do it while making to-do lists in your brain, or deciding on what you're going to do this weekend, or how you're going to finish that argument with your husband, or thinking about all the things you could have said to that person today. But then, have you ever meant to make a stop that you wouldn't normally make on the way to work or on the way home from work, or you had a day off and you need to run an errand and it's not somewhere where you would normally go, and you found yourself taking the usual route to work instead of the one that you meant to take? You find yourself asking, where am I going? Well, that neural pathway has been set. You don't have to think about it anymore. The same thing happens with beliefs, and some of these beliefs were created really early in our lives at a time that we might not even remember what created them. The sneaky thing about confirmation bias is we spend our lives often only paying attention to all of the evidence that confirms our beliefs. Essentially, we often see what we want to see. Now, in fairness to our brains, every second of the day we are exposed to something like 11 million bits of information. And as you can imagine, our conscious brain is only capable of registering a few of those bits at any one time. Now, there's an area of our brain called the reticular activating system, and this acts like a gatekeeper or a traffic cop. It only allows certain bits of information to get through to our conscious awareness. And these bits are the bits we've pre-programmed our brain to look for and allow through. When my first child was born, I lived directly across the street from the tram line, and I could sleep right through the tram coming and going all night long. But when my daughter was born, I could easily wake up when my baby cried and still sleep through the tram coming and going. And many of us have had partners who would have easily slept right through the baby crying. In fact, one bit of fun research that I found online hooked up volunteers in a sleep lab to an EEG machine. So that looks at brain waves. And they played recorded noises to see what men and women respond to most. What they found, probably no surprise to most of us, was that the men are most likely to wake up to a car alarm, where a woman reacts much faster to a crying baby. In fact, the crying baby didn't even make the top 10 for men. The theoretical explanation was that men respond to what endangers the whole family, where the woman responds to what endangers the baby. So we tell our brains what information to let through to our conscious thoughts. If you wake up in the morning and you stub your toe, or you spill your coffee, or you just wake up in a foul mood and you have the thought, this is going to be a really crappy day, then your brain is very likely going to look for all the reasons all day long that this is a crappy day just to confirm this thought. Confirmation bias has the ability to not only ruin our whole day, but it can really impair our decision-making abilities as well. So, for example, if we're convinced that a particular person or a product or an investment or even a job offer is good, we might ignore lots of warning signs that we could be wrong. I love the saying, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. See your confirmation bias for what it is and stop looking for reasons to believe there's someone they're not. That's going to save you a lot of grief. You're welcome. And sorry if you learned that the hard way like I did, maybe a few times. What we're seeing right now in social media, in the perimenopause and menopause space, is a really great example of how some people are not only practicing confirmation bias themselves, but also using your confirmation bias to gain your trust and sell you things, or even just to gain followers. You'll see lots of people, a lot of them even doctors, and especially dangerous when it comes from doctors, I might add, but doctors talking about this or that study and how it relates to you and why you should be listening. They use a lot of jargon like evidence, literature, data, and just the words research or study to back up their claims. So they may have found a study that says, for instance, that testosterone is proven to be helpful for well-being and mood in midlife women. But what they might not be telling you is that the study was a very old, small, limited study, and that larger, better quality studies have been done since that time, but that those studies have not been able to back up those original claims. So there's no conclusive evidence that testosterone improves mood and well-being in midlife women. So either this person is ignorant of what a quality study looks like, or their confirmation bias is kicked in, and this study to them is just proof of what they already believe, and they're ignoring evidence to the contrary, which is what we do with confirmation bias. We take what backs up our beliefs and we ignore what doesn't. Or they're appealing to your confirmation bias. If you believe that either mainstream medicine is holding out on you and this is proof, or you believe that hormones have to be the answer for everything, then that would appeal to your confirmation bias. Now, this exact scenario was played out online recently when a high-profile doctor in the menopause social media space was advertising that testosterone was evidence-based for mood and well-being. Fortunately, our own Australian menopause expert, Professor Susan Davis, who you would have heard me mention before, I'm sure, actually called her out on it by commenting very eloquently, I might add, on the social media post to ensure that others knew that this wasn't the whole story. In fact, it was her study that was originally commented on. So just a word of caution, you really do have to be careful what resources you choose to access, especially online. And if you're on social media and you aren't following Professor Davis yet, I would suggest you do so you know you're getting accurate evidence-based information around menopause and perimenopause. Anyway, I digress. Back to confirmation bias. In terms of making change in your life that you want to make, knowing about confirmation bias and accepting that it's a thing can help you recognize where it's working against you. If you don't believe you can make a certain change, then your brain is very likely going to show you all the reasons you can't. But if you turn it on its head and you purposefully start looking for all the reasons that it could be possible that you could make that change, then your brain will start looking for and showing you those. And with time, your belief can change to support you in making the change that you want to make. Now, the people that we're most likely to be attracted to and make friends with are usually people who share our same beliefs and values, and we are less likely to associate with people who don't. Now, this could put us at risk of only ever hearing information that confirms our views, and we may never have our opinions challenged. I think we all have blind spots where we don't know what we don't know, and confirmation bias can perpetuate those blind spots. One way of challenging confirmation bias is by listening to what others have to say and why, and being curious about opposing views. This can help you see issues and beliefs from other people's perspectives and can challenge your confirmation bias. So it can be fun making new friends and mixing in new groups to challenge yourself and reflect on where your confirmation biases might be. So today I want to challenge you to work on keeping an open mind, as I did when my girlfriend Tash recommended that book, The Let Them Theory, and I didn't think that I'd get much out of it, but I went in with an open mind and I really enjoyed seeing a lot of familiar concepts explored from a different perspective, and I ended up getting a lot out of it. There is always room for growth. I think that I'm going to keep that confirmation bias. I'm very happy to find evidence to confirm that belief, and I hope that you do too. I hope you've enjoyed this Manage Your Mind mindful moment. And if you have, and you can think of someone else who might enjoy it, please pass it on. And don't forget to rate and review the podcast to make it more visible to those who might get something out of it too. Have a great week, everyone. And until then, I hope you opt to thrive.
The Opt to Thrive podcast is designed for information purposes only and is not engaged in the giving of medical advice. The information provided on the podcast should not be used for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease. In no way should the information provided by Opt to Thrive be considered medical advice, and at all times the advice of a medical professional should supersede recommendations from Opt to Thrive. If you have or suspect you may have a health problem, you should consult your healthcare provider. The views expressed in this podcast are purely that of Dr. Sims and do not in any way reflect those of the institutions she contracts her medical services to.
Thank you for listening to Opt to Thrive. If you've enjoyed listening, please rate and share the podcast. You can visit our website at opttothrive.com and leave a comment for any subjects you would like to hear more about.